And you write in your book, but such trust requires an enormous amount of moral imagination, an ability to grasp evil on a scale that defies reason. But even that is not enough. One needs the courage to believe of what the mind rejects.
Yes.
It's just, even that sentence I've never heard before.
Today, the tables have turned. It's actually me that's in the guest chair this time.
Jan Jekielek, welcome to American Thought Leaders.
My wonderful friend, actor, and comedian Rob Schneider will be our guest host. For 20 years, I've investigated a crime almost too horrific to name, now documented in my new book, Killed to Order.
The whole Chinese transplant industry grows geometrically from 2000 to 2005. They built this on the backs of the Falun Gong starting in 2000.
60 to 90,000 transplants, involuntary organ transplants a year in China.
Correct. But there actually is a global market for what they call halal organs, which means Muslim organs.
Wow.
Our conversation moves from the unimaginable scope of this crime to the individuals who dared to expose it, to the survivors who lived to tell the truth, and the millions who continue to stand for faith and tradition amid repression.
The Chinese people is an amazing nation, beautiful people with a rich, incredible culture that has given so much to the world. It is my prayer that the Chinese can get back to that gift, to continue giving to the world.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek.
Jan Jekielek, welcome to American Thought Leaders.
Rob, it's great to be here.
How's it feel being on the other side?
A little bit daunting, perhaps.
Yes, it is.
Because I don't know what you're going to pull.
Not so comfortable, is it, Jan? Well, Jan, no, I've watched you for years and your professionalism, and it's nice to see you without your tie, for one thing. And it's nice to see you in the interviewee seat.
Mm-hmm.
You have a very vast knowledge about a lot of subjects. And the thing I really always loved about what you do is you're interested. Mm-hmm. You want to learn stuff. You want to learn how people think and why they think that and how this works or how that could happen, how that could come about. So it is a pleasure to have you here to talk about your book, Killed to Order.
I'm very grateful for your, frankly, deep and amazing interest in this brutal topic.
There is this kind of understood covenant between the medical practitioner and the patient, which seems to be the same for thousands of years, or as long as there's shaman or modern medical professionals, doctors, physicians. This is so outrageous and jumps so far beyond to where it asks you to accept the unimaginable. Is that a fair description?
When I first heard about it, I didn't want to believe it. I just felt revulsion, and my mind was wandering, to be quite honest, right?
Yes.
And it took me seeing a lot of hard evidence. And I was open, to be fair, I was open to it. I already knew what the Chinese Communist Party was capable of, broadly, but I still didn't want to accept that this could be happening because it's so extreme.
Because it's so extreme, and the barbarism and the absolute lack of any sort of medical morality or ethics required. And then also the scale of it, because it's not just one person doing something evil in a basement. The idea of government systemic mass murder has always been hard to believe, whether it's been in the Holocaust and in Auschwitz. You write in the book, but such trust to believe requires an enormous amount of moral imagination, an ability to grasp evil on a scale that defies reason. But even that is not enough. One needs the courage of what the mind rejects.
Yes.
It's just, even that sentence I've never heard before. Because what we're really talking about is, as you say, killed to order. And you have to just explain that to people in the real simple terms so somebody like I can understand it.
This is different than what you've heard about in terms of organ trafficking. You know, there's these urban legends that you hear about. Someone wakes up on ice, they've got a slit in their body, and there's a kidney has been extracted or something like this.
Yeah, which is horrific.
It's horrific.
But at least that guy is alive to tell the story and has a scar. This is another level.
This is a whole different thing. It requires, you know, you were referring to, you know, the reality of Nazi Germany and what they did to the Jewish people. It requires a state actor, someone who can push massive coercive power through a population, both in terms of propaganda. Okay, you have to be able to dehumanize a very large group of people in the eyes of their fellows. And the reason that part's important is most people aren't psychopathic. We have this weird quirk in our psychology, I think, that when we start believing that someone is lesser than us or somehow very different from us or somehow just evil, if that allows us to do some things to those people.
That person is a threat to society and to all of us. Then atrocities become possible.
Right. You said it exactly on the nose. Okay, they become possible. Without that dehumanization part, very hard to get that, because people will be like, no, I'm not going to do that to that person, right?
Yes.
The second part is you need to be able to incarcerate a huge group of people. That's another reason why you need a kind of state actor, because if you need a heart transplant, whether you're South Korean, Taiwanese, a super elite in China, or here in the US, right? In 2 weeks, scheduled, you could get yourself a heart transplant. Okay,
which is impossible knowing anything or about organ transplantation. It's sometimes the wait is at minimum 2 years, 5 years.
Right.
And most people, I would think, would die before even having that possibility.
Because in an ethical system, right, someone has to have some kind of a catastrophic accident, likely a car accident, okay, that they're really not coming back. Okay. You know, I know you like The Princess Bride as I do, right?
Yes.
And so there's this kind of line in there, which I think is apropos. I don't know if it's how appropriate it is, but the person has to be mostly dead.
Yeah.
Mostly dead. Okay. But you get a whole team of ethicists that gets together and decides, yes, this person isn't coming back. Therefore, it's okay to transplant those organs. And those organs have to match tissue.
Right.
Okay. Match blood type. Match the size, right?
Right.
And to get all of that, to have the accident and all of those things match is rare, extremely rare. So you have to wait, right? But here I can get it in 2 weeks. And how can I get that? Well, what happened in 1999, okay, the Chinese Communist Party, in communist societies, there's always an internal enemy that the state...
Yes, to exist, communism must have an enemy.
Absolutely. The external enemy, by the way, is always America. Always has been. Okay, because
even when we were helping
bastion
China.
of freedom, 100%. Absolutely.
They had to.
Right. That's what. Yeah. There's huge irony there. Right. There was years of propagandizing against America while America was giving everything.
Yeah.
But the internal enemy would change. Right. It was, you know, landowners at one point. Then in 1989, it was the student movement. Right. The student pro-democracy movement. Students.
Yes.
And then in 1999, it became the Falun Gong practitioners. So that was a spiritual movement. People were practicing truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. It was very grassroots, very bottom up in a way that I think the communists couldn't even understand. And, you know, basically the dictator at the time, Jiang Zemin, decided we're going to eradicate it, to use his terminology. It didn't necessarily mean kill everybody, by the way. It just meant get rid of it, right? We don't want this to be any issue for us.
It wasn't a real threat to the communist Chinese system at all. These are people that, you know, actually, if you look before communism in China, there's a tradition of spirituality, which is remarkable that that would become considered somehow the foundational spirituality of China would somehow become the enemy of the state.
Yeah, and precisely. This was actually an ancient practice, basically around from time immemorial. Just became very, very popular in the 90s. Also had health benefits, which I experienced some benefits from myself at one point in my life. But the bottom line was, when they decided to get rid of this, it turned out that the people that did this did not what we call brainwash or re-educate. That's what the communist term for it, or transform. I hate that term. easily. They really held to their core beliefs, and they wouldn't. And so they started torturing them to try to break them. And
mass torture.
Well, no, exactly, because they remember now they've incarcerated a whole lot of these people.
How many
in the
people are we
system.
talking? You're talking Falun Gong.
That's right. So there were
1999.
70 to 100 million people by government estimate that were doing this. Okay. And how many went into the prison and labor camp system? We don't know. Maybe 1 million, maybe 2. It's unclear exactly, but it was a mass thing, right?
That still exists today.
Still exists today, to the tune of, I mean, I think the last Freedom House estimate was something like 40 million. But the truth is that
40
that we don't really
million
know.
Human beings incarcerated.
Well, no. Okay, so
no.
how many people exist in China doing this practice today?
All right.
We don't know how many are.
How many are hidden?
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we don't. It's actually kind of a state secret how many.
Right.
But I remember in 2005, the UN Human Rights Commission, there was the special rapporteur on torture. His name was Manfred Novak. He estimated that half of all the people in the entire system were Falun Gong practitioners. So massive numbers of incarcerated people we're talking about. Okay.
So when you're talking, so in order to get this, as you say, this organ that is needed from a particular, whether it's somebody flying over from the United States or Israel, as you talk about in the book, to be able to get something in 2 weeks when the normal wait, if you're lucky, is 2 years to 5 years to get a match, you would have to have what at your disposal?
So because you have so many people in the system, now you can pre-blood type, tissue type, and organ scan them. Okay, so you have in a database all the vitals of some huge number of people. And that's how when someone, say in the US, right, wants to come and pays that money, 150, 200 grand, that person on the other side is already pre-matched to them, incarcerated, a prisoner of conscience, ready to be killed to order. And that's why the name of my book, the title is Killed to Order.
Wow. It does really boggle the mind, because in order to have that system ready for these involuntary organ transplants, there has to be, first of all, there has to be a mass incarceration. You have to biometrically check all the people that are incarcerated. And then you also have to have people incarcerating them. You have to have also physicians, expert physicians, and nurses that are at beck and call for this procedure to take place. And so that's why it does become unimaginable to me. So how does that process work? So somebody will is there an advertising mechanism, or how do they know, or people just know? So, because most people in the world do not know how these organs are harvested. But the Chinese allows people to come from other countries, as well as the elites, to come and purchase an organ, whether it's $30,000 or $100,000, I guess the estimate you say in your book. Recently, something happened that exposed this involuntary organ transplant system, and it was a hot mic incident. Can you tell us about that?
I honestly couldn't believe it when I heard about it. My phone was basically like ringing off the hook. I mean, not off the hook, because we don't have hooks these days, right? But yeah. I mean, let me recount. I'll give you the thumbnail of what happened. But basically, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Kim Jong-un are walking in Tiananmen Square.
Quite a threesome.
Observing quite the threesome. Yeah. Observing a military parade.
Mm-hmm.
And Xi says to Putin, roughly, when we're 70, we're just a baby, right? We're just babies. And then Putin responds, unbelievably, at least, or believably, depending how you would look at it, through continual organ transplantation, perhaps we can achieve immortality, right?
Yeah.
Wow. And then she responds, and this was the part where the light bulb goes off in my head.
Yeah.
Our target is 150 years. So 150 years is the kind of like a code. You can think of it like a code word. So there's the super elites in China have something called Project 981, and Project 981 is the super elite longevity project. And that indeed 150 years is the target of that project. So, having looked at this issue for over 20 years now, it had never, I had compartmentalized these things. I knew there was a super elite longevity project.
Yeah.
And they do indeed live many more years than the average person, already. And I knew there was forced organ harvesting, but I never connected the two so obviously, right?
Yeah.
Which is that through this continual organ transplant, through the availability of near instantaneous availability of organs for the super elites, they're actually living longer. And there's this crazy example that was sent to me a few years back. It was a eulogy of sorts, to a guy that basically, this sounds super crazy, right?
Talk about it in your book.
Exactly, super, like people would think this is nuts, but someone actually wrote a eulogy that said, isn't it amazing how this guy had multiple organs transplanted and therefore lived longer?
Yeah, but the other side to that is at what cost?
Exactly.
So how did he procure these organs?
Well, so you actually asked me a moment ago, right? How do people know about this?
Yeah.
Right? How do you find out? Well, so prior to 2006, and it still blows my mind, right? When we actually started reporting on this a lot, right? It was online. Like we have archived ads that were online that said, in a couple of weeks, you can get a new heart for this amount of cash, right? And then as soon as this became sort of reported on a little bit, a lot, those ads disappeared. And I'm guessing that the information stayed within these networks of hospitals and so on. I'll give you an example, right? Another thing I talk about in there is this former explant surgeon from Germany, right? Explained to me this scenario where there's a woman who has this heavy drinking problem and clearly a very loose set of morals. And she has now gone to China to get a liver transplant 3 times. I think in under about a 10-year period, because she keeps needing she keeps drinking heavily, the livers keep getting compromised, and she just gets another one. I wouldn't have believed this is possible, except that this explant surgeon verified this scenario, right? And this is fairly recent. And he believes that the way that she got connected with China is through the local transplantation authority in the province where they worked.
So she's clearly a sociopathic person.
Well, it would seem, no, I mean, because
at least selfish.
These things are so cosmic. But I was more ready to believe this because I remember back in 2007, another example, David Kilgore, who was one of the hero researchers, may rest in peace. He's not with us anymore, unfortunately. But he interviewed a guy who was Taiwanese, who had gone to China, had a very rare antibody condition in his body. And he received, went to China, and first kidney was rejected. So immediately they gave him a second, and then they gave him a third, and then they gave him a fourth, and none of those worked. So he goes back to Taiwan, goes back on dialysis, comes back 4 months later, and they try a 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th kidney, and the 8th one is the one that holds. And David Kilgore interviewed the guy who actually had this done. Right? So, again, unimaginable things can happen when you have, on-demand organs available from people.
So 8 different Chinese Falun Gong members were murdered for this guy's attempted new kidneys.
Most likely, yes. And this is one of the huge tragedies of this, right? They built this on the backs of the Falun Gong starting in 2000. The whole Chinese transplant industry grows geometrically from 2000 to 2005. Kind of like I don't even say exponentially, geometrically, okay? And in 2005, it sort of starts to plateau, but grows a little more. And by the end of the 2000s, we've got 60 to 90,000 transplants a year being done. Okay, that's the best estimate. That's the range. It's very hard to estimate. This is a state secret. They don't have statistics. They pretend it's not happening, right?
But it's a state secret, but clearly the very top of the Chinese elite know about it because they discussed it.
To go back to your point, right? I think for these Chinese super elites, the people, the I forget the exact number, but something like 10 million people that have these so-called red cards, who have access to every level of the system, including the super elite medical system, basically. It seems that they have unlimited on-demand organs available to them, basically in perpetuity. And this is what I keep thinking about this, because, it's about a $9 billion a year industry. If you look at those numbers, 60 to 90,000 transplants a year, average it out.
60 to 90,000 transplants.
A year.
Involuntary organ transplants a year in China.
Correct. That's right. It's mind-blowing. 40,000 was the record in the US last year. So it's a huge number, and it's hard to fathom. Again,
so 40,000 voluntary for people who were lucky enough to get this life-saving procedure.
Correct.
The organ transplant from someone who accidentally died, in most likely car or motorcycle accident.
And that would also include the kidney transplants, where sometimes someone is giving up a kidney.
I would say that would be the majority of the
combination.
organ transplants would be the kidney transplant.
Yeah, I would have to find out. I'm not sure actually on that point, but
honestly, Jan, this subject, I don't even feel comfortable joking about. It boggles the mind, because it seems like one of the no-go areas. I mean, I remember any joke about the Holocaust. You couldn't. How? Because this is the only thing that harkens back to me, is that it takes so many people to be complicit in this. And this is after the dehumanization process. This is after the vilifying of a group. This is after identifying the group, after alienating that group, and then after taking that group out of society and concentrating them in a particular area, concentration camp. And then that requires so much. I mean, for Nazi Germany, it required people to be willing to identify the Jewish people, or whether it was homosexuals or gypsies, and then those people to take them, imprison them, put them on trains, and then the people on the trains, and then the people transporting them. That whole process took
100%.
Hundreds of thousands of people to be able to do for the 6 million Jews that were murdered in the concentration camps. So this particular thing also takes thousands. So, I mean, has there been people that have been able to expose this, that were involved in that system?
I want to make one comment before I answer your question, right? The tragedy of really nothing being done about this for the better part of 14 or 15 years, now we're talking 2000 to 2014, 2015, is that the Chinese Communist Party found another group to do the same thing to, the Uyghurs, dehumanize them, incarcerate 1 million plus of them, and then start doing the same forced organ harvesting
So the Uyghurs
procedures.
were taking place, the Falun Gong were the first people, and then you do run out of enemies. And truthfully, like what the communists always have to have is they need an external enemy, but they also need an internal enemy.
Correct.
And then to re-energize that, they need a new enemy.
Correct.
Because this idea of utopia that is promised that never comes needs to be blamed on something besides the state. And so what was about the Uyghurs that was particularly vulnerable, or how did they vilify them?
Well, so in a way, there's already been a kind of project to culturally assimilate, or, I mean, the U.S. believes, the official U.S. government position on what's being done to the Uyghurs is genocide.
Okay.
And that's not a casual assertion. It's not the way that people use genocide these days to mean like some sort of, mass death is usually when people say genocide, that's what they mean. This is a different thing. This is an actual attempt to eradicate in whole or in part a group of people. So that's done in different ways. It's not always just through mass killing, right? It's also done through preventing people from following their cultural norms. It's through sterilization, anyway, I could go on, but multiple things altogether would yield this very unusual designation. So the Uyghurs, for some time, have been considered to kind of, because they're an ethnic minority, and there is this, we could discuss the whole different topic of the Chinese Communist Party has been fueling a kind of Han supremacy ideology alongside it to help bolster its own rule. So there's already a kind of a dehumanization aspect there in the northwest of China. It's a relatively small group, maybe 12 million people. I'd have to check the actual numbers, but something like that. and it was just very convenient because it's a military controlled area, right? Only people allowed in there are people who are going to say beautiful things and watch, sort of these Potemkin villages type shows and cultural displays and things like that. So the short answer is it's a different culture. It's an area that's important strategically to the Chinese Communist Party. They're looking to assimilate it with their own people, with, basically people who put communism first. And it just makes this group particularly vulnerable and very easy to use. And the worst part, and I hate even saying this, but there actually is a global market for what they call halal organs, which means Muslim organs. And the Uyghurs are indeed a Muslim sect.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that would go to the Middle East, obviously, and
something like that.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And so going back to the idea that to expose this, have there been survivors? Can you tell us about the survivors of this and also maybe some of the physicians? Because I think to do something this abjectly cruel and inhumane and taking this life-saving procedure and this advance in medicine, which is literally extending people's lives in some cases by decades, and the perversion of it is, it's what, like Frank Turek, the Christian scholar, describes as what evil is degrading, taking something beautiful and degrading it. The idea of organ transplants is a life-saving, incredible gift, and perverting it to murdering people for profit is outrageous. And so have there been people who've been able to, who I would think you would go mad being a physician, taking organs, killing somebody, knowingly killing somebody to save somebody else's life. I would think that would drive somebody, if they had a conscience at all, it would drive them mad.
It's a perversion of an entire profession, right? And as you point out, it's not just the transplant surgeons, it's everybody else in the system. There's a lot of people that need to participate in order to achieve an organ transplantation situation. But actually, one of the whistleblowers, one of the original whistleblowers was a woman named Annie, pseudonym Annie.
Yeah.
And her husband was one of these surgeons, and he basically confessed to her after he was having nightmares. She was going to divorce him, and he confessed that he had removed corneas from 2,000 living people, right? And I mean, an extreme situation. But in terms of these surgeons, there's only been a few that have actually come forth, and most of them, aside from, and this wasn't even him, this was his wife, right?
Yeah.
They've been people who were doing it a little bit earlier than this whole mass growth of the industry happened in the early 2000s. So there's a surgeon that, basically, I think they were experimenting at that time. They had, basically prisoners of some sort. And a surgeon was basically forced under military guard to do the procedure, even they knew that this person was still alive. Right? There's Enver Tohti is an example of that. He is actually an Uyghur a surgeon that did this, again, before this mass kind of geometric growth of the entire industry. There's a few examples, but not many. Remember, these people are really putting their lives on the line to admit to something like this, right?